Penn State University has a new athletic director. Maybe? There's a lot of smoke going on right now, and to help me figure out if they're smoke signals or just somebody started a fire in a trash can, I've got Nate Bauer, senior editor of Blue White Illustrated, to help us talk through what's going on with Penn State's AD search. Now, to start this off, Nate, first off, hello. How are you?
I'm great. I just conjuring images of fires in a trash can just has me cracking up a little bit. But
well, it's 40 degrees right now, so that maybe I'm just imagining what I want in my cold studio.
Yeah.
So to start off the week, you had news, I believe it was on Sunday on our live show, that Penn State was going to name the athletic director within the week or very soon. Pretty soon after that, there was more news on that situation. So fill us in on what's been going on with Penn State's search and what's been out there when it comes to the names that have been talked about.
Yeah. So where to start? Yeah. I mean, it kind of came through and I posted, I think, on our site on Saturday or maybe Sunday morning that right, it was winding down. Right, the search for Penn State's athletic director was winding down. Didn't have a name. Very clearly, it was down to a guy, a couple of candidates. But the point of my post was simply, hey, this thing is coming to a close. They have a person in mind. And then Tuesday, Pete Thamel of ESPN reported, and I want to make sure that I get all of this correct. Okay. His story at ESPN, quote, sources, Penn State is targeting Boston College athletic director Pat Kraft to be the school's next athletic director. A deal has yet to be finalized, but is expected to be by the end of the week. Okay. So that, obviously, like, Pete Thamel's a great reporter, tried and true. So I followed up, and started to kind of see what's what from Penn State's end. And yeah, kind of by the middle of the day on Tuesday, it had filtered through enough, I would say, to where I felt comfortable confirming that he is, in fact, he's the guy. Right. So, you never know. And it's hard to get kind of details in terms of where the process is. Right. Because
Right.
as I know, as you know, as many, many people know, deals aren't done until the lawyers have had their look.
It's not done until it's officially legally done, until there's no way out.
Correct.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's funny. Somebody brought it to my attention this morning. Manny Diaz and Pat Kraft know each other very well from a certain set of circumstances that happened while Pat was at Temple, right? Yeah. Years ago. Manny, it doesn't matter. We won't go down that road. But the point being is, I feel comfortable enough. I put it out in a story yesterday and can say here, Pat Kraft is the guy. Penn State has chosen him. I don't know what details there are to be worked out, if they have worked out the details, but it's fully anticipated that he will be Penn State's next athletic director.
So that's some big news here on the BWI Daily Edition that you, of course, reported over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. And if you've been following the story that we just laid out or following the BWI YouTube channel, you had this information, last couple of days, but it came first. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com on the premium Lions Den message forum. If you want to get that information and have these things to say and sound super smart, Nate's your guy, and he'll give you that information for $1. You get 12 months of access for one single dollar, and then you're in. Then you're in the club. So sign up right now. Link is in the description of this video, so you can get all this information and stay up to date when we get more information, more context to this, because Nate isn't done just reporting a name. We're going to find out some more information about what's going on behind the scenes at Penn State, all that stuff. Not to put more work on your plate, just saying what I know you're doing. So the next question is, if this comes to fruition, if they get this baton passed in the relay to the finish line and everything finalizes, time to get to know Pat Kraft. So what do we know about him and his reputation so far as an athletic director? I believe at 2 stops, correct? At Temple and at Boston College.
Yeah. So he has a few professional stops. He started as a walk-on at Indiana University, okay? So he was a walk-on football player for the Hoosiers. I want to say I don't actually know. Maybe the late 90s. It doesn't matter. The point is, his athletic career started there, right? He was a walk on at Indiana, became a scholarship player, came up through football. After his football career was over, he went into athletic administration. He spent time at Indiana, at his alma mater. He moved to Loyola Chicago and spent a couple of years there. And then he really, like, his start was as a deputy athletic director at Temple. During that time while he was there, I think he was there for 3 or 4 years before he ascended into the head AD job, right? Their AD left. He took the job, I believe, in 2015 and spent from 2015 to 2020 as Temple's athletic director, which we can get to in a moment, but it included a pretty dramatic, right, like, rise and climb for Temple athletics, specifically football, of which Penn State fans can jog their memory to September of 2015. A certain team in Philadelphia surprised Penn State with a win.
And a lot of sacks.
And a lot of
So
sacks.
many sacks.
10 sacks at the beginning of that season. So that was that. Moved to Boston College, where he has been the athletic director since 2020. So he spent the last couple of years at Boston College, has had some success there, and now again is anticipated very much to be Penn State's next athletic director.
Just doing a quick perusing, trying to find when he was a walk-on at Indiana, named to numerous 40 under 40 or high-profile lists as far as up-and-coming administrators in college football over the last 5 or 6 years. So a name that Penn State fans might not be aware of, but a name that is well known, I would say, in the sports world. What is the importance? And this is just, if you would, go with me here. What's the importance of being from the Northeast for your athletic director? Because he spent a lot of time in this region. Is that a value, and is that something that is would be a priority if you were searching for Penn State's next athletic director?
Yeah, I mean, look, like, there's many ways to skin a cat. And so, he's from Illinois. I think that there's certainly obviously familiarity with the Big Ten, right, which is essential and a key element here. In terms of the Northeast, I mean, it's Penn State's donor base, it's Penn State's fan base, right? I mean,
right.
Time in Philadelphia, time in Boston. Obviously Boston's a little bit less so, but I mean, he's going to be familiar with the circles that Penn State runs in and the people that are key to propelling Penn State athletics forward. It is a huge, massive community, that make up Penn State's alumni base, that make up Penn State's donor base. But I mean, I to me, the key here is not necessarily where he's from or what he's familiar with, as much as watch a couple of YouTube interviews with him and you'll get it.
Yeah.
He is.
Can you describe that for me then?
Yeah, no, he's just, I think it will be very difficult for people to not like him. He's just very outgoing, very, enthusiastic. Like, I think that sometimes, I'm not going to say that it's easy to reduce these things to just a couple of characteristics, right? You got to be smart.
Yep.
You got to be able to balance things and understand and set a direction for where you want an athletic department to go. But on the flip side of that, it just really helps if you can lead. If you can, if you can convince other people to share in your vision. And this guy, Pat Kraft, has that very much on his resume as having done that at Temple for 5 years and then having done that for the last couple of years. Like Boston College fans who are aware of this, Boston, like people in that orbit are dejected isn't the right word, but like, yeah, I mean, there's
Yeah.
disappointment there. They understand the
So,
value that Pat Kraft brings.
what was he doing at Boston College then that was generating such positive returns? Because I think most fans will look to the success of the individual teams and maybe won't
Yeah.
know all of the other things. So what was going on at Boston College that was so positive?
Yeah. So one, and this is, I mean, I've got his little cheat sheet up here from Boston College. First thing under fundraising, secured a gift of $15 million from alumni for a future practice facility for men's and women's basketball. Right. Like, so got it done. Was able to do fundraising. He kept, and Boston College is a great university to begin with, but kept the academic standards high within athletics. And like giving people credit for success of programs that were already established or already had success before you arrive is kind of right. Like
Right.
Boston College women's lacrosse won a national championship. Like,
Right.
does Pat Kraft get credit for that? Yes, technically, but that's not why he's well liked. He
Yeah.
negotiated a deal with New Balance, which is like way off the reservation in terms of, kind of the standard, like, I think New Balance has, his name's escaping me. Can you help me? The dude from, that went to the Clippers from Toronto.
Kawhi Leonard?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So like, the point being is like, you've got some major athletic companies in Adidas and Nike who kind of run the show.
Yeah.
And I think that they are still partnered with Adidas at Boston College, but also has a deal with New Balance. Like that's
to be able to do that right there of
unconventional
not
thinking.
Yeah, not having a monopoly deal at a university. I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that.
Yeah. So like it's just was setting a course for Boston College, already had set a course for Temple, and that's why he, was kind of perceived in this light of being a guy who, again, that age factor, that youth, I think can help, right? Particularly in today's era of college athletics where things are rapidly changing. Like things are just vastly different.
Would you consider some of the things you've seen from Pat Kraft? Would you consider that bold and aggressive?
Ha! Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, you said it, and so, like, look, I just listened to James Franklin's interview with Rich Eisen a couple of days ago, right? I listened to it this morning, and he wasn't talking about athletic director, but he was asked about the direction of college athletics. He something that Dabo Swinney had said about college football and kind of blowing up the model and how everything's going to change. And James Franklin echoed those thoughts. He wasn't necessarily like dialed into exactly what it has to look like.
Yeah.
But just this notion of that there have to be moves and steps taken toward unification, towards standardization in all of this. And right now, like that's completely out the window. Some of it for fault of the NCAAs, some of it not through their fault, but like court decisions that have upended really what the model and what it can be, what power the NCAA has. So no, I mean, if you're looking at Penn State specifically and this wider, broader landscape of college athletics, the characteristics that we just laid out that Pat Kraft brings to the table, I think that's what you're looking for. I think that those are some of the things that if you want to be at the front of the line, if you want to be part of the conversation and not simply fall in line with what everyone else is doing, that's the type of leadership that you want and that you need to see.
We're updating you on the Penn State athletic director search with senior editor Nate Bauer discussing what he's learned about Pat Kraft, who is reportedly, by his reporting and by Pete Thamel, is the guy for Penn State. When that officially happens, how all of this plays out is yet to be determined as we're recording here in the middle of the day on Wednesday. But what are you looking for next? What's the next step here, or the next thing you want to learn when it comes to this particular situation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, certain look, like, having put myself out there a little bit, right? It's, and we've talked about this, like, it always just feels better when it's finalized, as a reporter, right? Like, that's the next thing that I want to see is the press release from Penn State saying, this is a done deal. It's all wrapped up. Nothing has fallen through the cracks, right? Yeah. So that's the first thing. And then
Nate, I just kind of pause there. I know how you feel because tomorrow is the NFL draft, and I've said for 3 months, Jaquan Brisker should be a first-round draft pick, and if he's not, I'm gonna look real dumb. So I get it. I get how you feel.
I feel good about it. I feel sure about it, but it's why we word things carefully, right? Yeah. As targeted, anticipated, like so. In any case, no, and then I want to know what the timeline is, right? Like, what's the timeline on Sandy Barber's transition out? Are there things that she can help him with? It's just a big time of change for Penn State with a new president in Dr. Neely Bendapudi, and now an athletic director. And so, like, we all know this. It's not a surprise. Penn State athletics has a ton of stuff to deal with, right? Like, and
I thought you were just gonna leave it at stuff. Like, hey, they've got a lot of things. Like, they've got buildings and cars, and I'm like, yep, they do.
Yeah. You should see the equipment room. No, like, but and it's not. A lot of it is based on your perspective, right? And so if you look at Penn State in totality, for the athletic department, you can look at things as ongoing concerns or problems, right? How do you make more money, right? How do you get more fans in the stands? What do you do with Beaver Stadium? What do you do with and this is off of the radar of most of the people watching this probably, but what do you do with the tennis center? Right. Like, it's not good. It's run down. What do you do with some of these facilities that badly need updated? And so, like, there's that side of it, but then depending on your perspective, it's opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. How do you corral 700,000 living alumni to get on board with the notion of a donor culture, right? Right? Like a booster culture, because that's what NIL is, right? Like, you just, all of those things can be possibly opportunities where, hey, hit the ground running, start to establish those relationships. I mean, I'm going to talk about it, and I'm not completely comfortable with it because I don't know all of the ins and outs, but there is still residue and damage from how the university handled Joe Paterno and some of those things from 10 years ago, like that, that plays in. So the people who are here now and the people who are making decisions, Pat Kraft will have had nothing to do with that, but it's still incumbent on whoever is steering the ship to establish solid relationships, establish, good standing, so that the people who have the means, who have the capacity to be invested in Penn State athletics, are enthusiastic and willing participants in doing so.
Yeah. Two last things I want to ask you before we get out of here. The first is really just an update on the NIL situation with Penn State. With the infrastructure that they have and what they're working with, kind of the ecosystem that you just described, but what is already up and running, and this integration of a new athletic director whether it's Pat Kraft or not. Like if there's some out of left field thing that happens. What is the going back to, they've got a lot of stuff. What are they working with in terms of tangible things right now that are positive? Or, is there something else that needs to be built in order to be competitive in the NIL landscape? Or is that too wide open of a question?
Well, I mean, I think the problem right now, and you're seeing this in reporting elsewhere, is nobody knows what anybody else is doing. Okay. Yeah. And I'm just going to give you an example. A couple of days ago, I think it was Saturday, Miami basketball got a commitment from one of the top transfers, if not the top transfer in the country, from Kansas State. And part of the deal, part of the announcement of that deal was not from the university. It was from the mega booster who, signed him to an NIL deal with his company for $800,000 over 2 years.
So I know that this is legal, but isn't there some sort of tampering, sort of direct pay for recruitment thing that you're not supposed to be doing? Like, it's not supposed to be so direct. So, like, I know that none of the rules apply anymore, but like, how is that? This all seems very gray.
It's extremely gray. It's extremely gray. And I don't know all of, I think that there is a ton of opportunity to shape the narrative the way that you want. And so if you just say that you're doing this, it doesn't matter what you're actually doing.
Right.
It's, hey, this was our intention. This is what we did. You can't prove otherwise. Here it is. Right. And so I mean, but that's the example of what's happening out there. Right. There's a story today that Texas A&M, who, was reported to have spent big money on securing its top-ranked class of 2022, that their culture is concerned that they're not keeping pace, right? Like, it's just, this is what an arms race looks like.
Right.
When you are trying to build up your own stockpile, but you're not necessarily broadcasting it to the rest of the world what that stockpile looks like.
Fear and insecurity, right? That's kind of leading the day right now, is the fear and insecurity of, is this enough? We don't know what this is, so is there enough? All with the backdrop of Mark Emmert has announced recently that he's stepping down as president of the NCAA, which might be a good thing or a bad thing, but like, just the point of, like, the turmoil does not stop. There's a new thing that is changing. It seems like either every single week, every single quarter, there's always something new. Now, with all of that said, the last thing I want to get to, and probably should have got this earlier because Penn State fans want to know this, but I don't think you have any particular direct information. It's more of a conversation about Beaver Stadium. You mentioned it. What do you do with Beaver Stadium? So I guess if you were the athletic director coming into Penn State right now, what do you do with Beaver Stadium? I'll leave it to this. Where is it on your priority list to start?
So there's a few angles here. One, I would blow it up. Start new.
Yeah.
I just would. I mean, you're dealing with the costs of, and this is a yearly thing. I've talked about this before. Every year there is a cost to being still in Beaver Stadium, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is at minimum in the millions and millions of dollars just to make it functional, right? To have functional bathrooms, to, like, not just upkeep, but like things that, like foundational things so that the stadium doesn't collapse, right? So you've got to balance that against, what does it cost to build new? What are the opportunities to build new? Right. Like, I mean, there's just so many different factors that go into it. Certainly you're going to have to make the investment to keep it afloat. If you don't have any, like, there's not going to be a new Beaver Stadium in the next 5 years. I can promise that. I can tell you that right now. Toward year 10, like a decade from now, maybe, I mean, it's just very,
By that
very,
point, your kids are going to be in it. Are going to be going to new Beaver Stadium.
Yeah. So, well, or whatever it is. I mean, whether it's a renovation or a new project. I mean, it's just such a monumental undertaking that there are so many things that need to be sorted out.
But isn't this the same conversation we had when the master plan came out? And not to throw shade at Sandy Barber, who was in a similar situation coming into the situation after everything you mentioned with Joe Paterno and trying to transition the university out of that time. Part of the master plan was like, it's down the road from here. We're in the middle of down the road right now. So this has been a can that has been kicked down the road continually. So at some point, something has to be done.
There needs to be a direction set, because I think that that's ultimately why there's a stalemate, right?
Yeah.
Is there isn't even a, like, how do you get people to get on board with something that you're doing in the future when they don't know what that is, right? If it's a renovation project, now granted, Penn State has just wrapped or is in the process of wrapping within the next couple of months. There was just a story about it, a huge university capital campaign. They raised $2 billion for the university. Like, that's okay. So that's coming to a close. Now, athletics can do something concurrent to that, but it doesn't seem like they are. But maybe there's an opportunity now saying, okay, this university fundraising is done. Now athletics can get into it and really, like, set the direction. What are you doing? This is what the new stadium is going to look like. This is what a renovated stadium is going to look like. We need everybody on board. Like, and so I think that that's going to be an opportunity for Pat Kraft to rally the troops, so to speak, to get people in line with a direction. Just set the direction, though, because that's what hasn't happened yet.
Yep. I think that you're right, there's been a hesitancy to say what you said. You've got to blow up Beaver Stadium, and I think everyone realistically knows that it would cost as much, if not more, to renovate it and to make it, because once you do upgrades, then you've got to get everything to current codes, and you've got to do everything the correct way, and you're retrofitting a stadium that's been pieced together over 60 years. Yep. I don't have the mental capacity to think of how you do that. I don't think people really want to take on that task either, if you're the architect or anybody who's doing that.
I think what, and this is just a personal observation, but I think what's interesting to me, and I'll be curious to see some of the comments to this conversation on this video, but the stance has softened dramatically from the fan base.
Yeah.
Right. When it was first proposed, like, the feedback was not unanimous, but pretty close. Hey, you got to keep Beaver Stadium.
Yep.
Whatever it costs, you got to keep this place. It's too special. Right. And over the last 10 years, some of what I've seen is fans who have experienced other game day environments. AT&T Stadium in Dallas, right? Penn State fans that went to that game, Penn State fans that go to the Link, but whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, all of these different fan experiences have been improved so dramatically. And then you go to a game at Beaver Stadium and you've got to wait 20 minutes to use the restroom. You've got to wait 20 minutes to get bad chicken fingers and French fries that are soggy. Like, all of those things that could be overlooked for the notion of, like, nostalgia and keeping what they've kind of gone out the window. The sentiment has turned to, man, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right. Like, the Beaver State, like, sitting in a 12-inch wide window of space on a metal bleacher just doesn't cut it for a lot of people.
But that's how you get 107,000 people in there, baby, is you've got to give up a little of your personal space. Your bubble is invaded to get 107,000. And that part, I think, still matters, no matter what, to the new stadium. It has to be that size, and when it gets to be that size, the price tag is going to be interesting. That's going to be
I mean, they're not gonna have 107, whatever it is. I mean, even if it's a renovation, they're gonna have to go down in size. I don't know that. Well, it doesn't matter.
I just think
it's a
the
prestige.
Big thing. the prestige of being over 100,000, that's what I think fans don't want to lose. Is they want that bragging right to say, this is the best environment in college football because look how many people show up and look how many people we can fit into our giant stadium that nobody else has. That's the unique part of Beaver Stadium, is just the volume of people, because the stadium itself is in no way special. Like, it is... the first time I saw it...
Careful.
The first time I saw it, I was reminded of something gladiatorial. Like, this is rough. This is where grit is born. You know, those sort of things. Like, the exposed metal brings it a certain ambiance of lack of refinement. There's nothing like ode to yesteryear about architecture or anything about it. It's just 107,000 people. It's a giant bowl that people file into and then yell at college students from Iowa for 3-4 hours. So we'll see how that goes. That'll do it today for the BWI Daily Edition. Great job, as always, by Nate Bauer. Thank you so much for the insight and the information on Penn State's athletic director search.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We'll be back tomorrow. The draft is coming up this week. We're going to talk about that. Our mailbag episode this week as well. Fitting everything in a very busy end to April. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. We'll talk to you then.